All right, settle yourselves. Pour that drink I mentioned before. Maybe make it a double this time. Because we're not talking about houses tonight, or sprawling asylums soaking up decades of misery like sponges. No, we're going smaller, more intimate, infinitely more insidious. Sometimes, the most terrifying hauntings aren't tied to a place, but to an object, something small enough to hold in your hands, something you might even invite into your home, thinking it beautiful, or quaint, or precious, until you realize it didn't come alone. Understand this. Sentiment is a powerful thing, but grief, rage, violent despair, those emotions can imprint. They can latch onto wood and metal, weave themselves into melodies, and wait patiently for someone to come along and wind the key one more time. I'm going to tell you about a music box. Sounds innocent, doesn't it? Like something you'd find in your grandmother's attic, smelling faintly of cedar and lavender's attic, through an estate liquidation I was advising on many years back. Belonged to a woman named Evelyn Crane, who had lived a long, secluded life in a dusty old house crammed with antiques and shadows. She died alone, no heirs to speak of. The music box wasn't listed as anything particularly valuable, just lumped in with miscellaneous decorative items. I almost overlooked it myself, crafted from dark, almost black wood, ebony, perhaps, inlaid with intricate mother-of-pearl designs depicting weeping willows and melancholic, moon-faced cherubs. Not exactly cheerful. Even then, it had a small, tarnished silver keyhole on the side. No markings, no maker's name. Just anonymous, heavy and strangely cold to the touch, even on a warm day. The liquidator, a gruff fellow named Harris, practically gave it to me. Take it, he'd grunted. Gives me the creeps. Sat on her nightstand, apparently. Never saw her wind it, mind you, but sometimes. He trailed off, shrugging. Sometimes you'd hear it, faintly, even from downstairs. He clearly wanted rid of it, against my better judgment. Even then, I had a sense about certain objects. I took it. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe the object itself exerted a subtle pull. I brought it back to my study, a quiet room lined with books, my sanctuary. I placed it on a high shelf, intending to research it later, maybe clean it up. For the first few weeks, nothing happened. It just sat there, dark wood absorbing the lamplight, the mother of pearl catching faint glimmers. It drew the eye, certainly. There was a quality to it, a stillness that felt watchful. But that could have been my imagination, colored by Harris's unease. Then, the first oddity. I was working late one night, silence thick around me except for the scratching of my pen. Suddenly, faint, tinkling notes drifted through the air, a simple, rather mournful melody. I froze, listening intently. It sounded like the music box, impossibly faint, as if coming from a great distance, or perhaps from within the walls themselves. It lasted only a few seconds, then stopped. I checked the box on the shelf, untouched, keyhole empty. I dismissed it, an old house settling, pipes groaning, my mind playing tricks in the late hours, rational explanations we cling to like life rafts. But it happened again a few nights later. Same time, same faint, melancholic tune. This time, I felt something else. A distinct drop in temperature localized around the shelf where the box sat. Not just cool, but cold. A penetrating chill that raised gooseflesh on my arms, and accompanying the music, a feeling, immense sadness, a wave of grief so profound, so palpable, it felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. It wasn't my grief. It was alien, invasive, echoing across time from whoever had cherished, perhaps suffered alongside. This box. The melody stopped. The cold dissipated it. The oppressive sadness lifted, leaving me shaken, my heart pounding. I tried to research Evelyn Crane, the previous owner. Found little. Reclusive, eccentric, family fortune dwindled over generations. No record of children. Neighbors remembered her as solitary, rarely seen, sometimes heard weeping late at night. Nothing overtly sinister. Then I tried researching the box itself, looking for similar designs, trying to date it. The style suggested late 19th century, maybe early 20th. The weeping willow motif was common mourning imagery from that period. But the moon-faced cherubs, they were unsettling. Their pearl eyes seemed too wide, their smiles fixed, almost mocking. The occurrences grew slightly more frequent. The phantom music, always the same sad tune. The sudden cold spots near the shelf. The overwhelming waves of grief that would wash over me without warning when I was in the study. I started feeling reluctant to be in the room alone at night. The watchful stillness of the box felt less passive now, more expectant. Waiting for what? For me to find the key, to wind it up and unleash the full force of whatever sorrow was bound within its dark wood and tarnished mechanism. The thought sent a genuine chill down my spine, far colder than the phantom drops in temperature. The box wasn't just an object anymore. It was a container, and I was beginning to fear what might happen if the contents were ever truly released. The music box sat on the shelf, a silent sentinel in my study, radiating a palpable aura of cold sorrow even when dormant. The faint phantom melodies, the sudden chills, the waves of invasive grief, they became unwelcome fixtures in my evenings. Sleep grew difficult when I was in the house alone. I'd find myself listening intently in the dead of night, straining to hear those tinkling, mournful notes, half dreading, half expecting them. The feeling of being watched intensified, particularly in the study. It felt as if unseen eyes followed my movements whenever I was near the box. A heavy, mournful scrutiny that prickled the back of my neck. Rationality battled with creeping dread. I tried to convince myself it was suggestion, the power of the object's morbid aesthetics, Harris's unease planting a seed. I even moved the box to a different room, tucking it away in a closet. It made no difference. The phenomena seemed tied to the box's presence in the house, not its specific location. The cold spots would manifest near the closet door. The phantom music would drift from that direction. The oppressive sadness would descend unexpectedly, thick and suffocating. It was becoming increasingly clear that the box possessed an influence that defied proximity, that its presence alone was enough to leach warmth and peace from the environment. Driven by a mixture of fear and morbid curiosity, I redoubled my efforts to find the key. If winding it was what the entity, the imprinted sorrow, the waiting presence, desired, then perhaps confronting it directly was the only way. Or perhaps it was madness, willingly turning the key on a Pandora's box of spectral grief. I searched through the remaining boxes from Evelyn Crane's estate liquidation, meticulous inventories, even contacted Harris again, asking if a small, tarnished silver key, or perhaps deliberately separated from the box one evening, driven by frustration and a growing sense of unease that felt like a physical pressure building in the house. I took the music box down from its relegated spot in the closet. Holding it felt wrong. The dark wood was colder than ever, radiating a chill that bit through my fingers despite the ambient room temperature. The mother-of-pearl cherubs seemed to shimmer in the low light, their fixed smiles widening into grotesque, knowing leers. I examined the keyhole again. Tarnished silver, intricately shaped. What if the original key wasn't needed? What if the original key wasn't needed? What if any key, or even a tool, could activate the mechanism? I found myself in my workshop, the music box, sitting ominously on the workbench under the harsh glare of an overhead lamp. I gathered a set of small lock picks and tension wrenches, tools I normally used for historical hardware restoration, not for potentially awakening dormant entities. My hands trembled slightly as I selected a thin pick. Was I insane? Probably, but the feeling that confronting this thing was necessary, unavoidable, had grown stronger than my fear. I inserted the tension wrench into the tiny keyhole, applying gentle pressure. Then, slowly, carefully, I inserted the pick, feeling for the tumblers within the mechanism. It felt old, complex, not like a simple music box lock, more like a precision instrument. I probed gently. Click. A tumbler yielded. My breath hitched. The air in the workshop grew noticeably colder. The oppressive sadness I associated with the box began to gather, pressing in on me. Click. Another tumbler. The cold intensified. A faint, almost inaudible whisper seemed to slither at the edge of my hearing, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Mine. Click. The sadness became a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. The whisper grew slightly louder, coalescing into faint. Sibilant syllables I couldn't quite decipher. Forever code. The final tumbler. The tension wrench turned slightly. The lock mechanism had yielded. A profound silence fell over the workshop. The cold remained, biting deep. The oppressive sadness held its breath. I hadn't wound it yet, merely unlocked it. But something had shifted. A seal had been broken. The potential energy held within the box felt immense, a coiled spring of ancient grief and despair ready to unleash itself. I hesitated it, pick and wrench still in the lock. My heart hammered against my ribs. Should I proceed? Should I wind it? What horrors would the full melody unleash? As I debated, a new sound began, not from the box itself, but from the corner of the workshop, behind a stack of lumber. A soft, rhythmic sobbing, a woman's heartbroken weeping, filled with such utter desolation it felt like a physical blow. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence, raw and agonizing. It sounded impossibly real, impossibly close. I slowly turned my head It sounded impossibly real, impossibly close, flashlight beam trembling, towards the source of the sound. The weeping continued, desperate, hopeless, and from the shadows in the corner, a faint, shimmering outline began to form. The translucent figure of a woman, hunched over, hands covering her face, her form flickering like a weak flame, radiating waves of unbearable sorrow that matched the invasive grief the box itself emitted. It seemed the box didn't just play music. Unlocking it had given form to the grief trapped within. And she was right here, with me, in my workshop. The weeping intensified, echoing the mournful, unheard melody coiled within the mechanism, waiting to be fully played. The spectral woman weeping in the corner wasn't just an echo. She felt like the source. Her sorrow was a tangible force, radiating outwards, thickening the air, making the cold in the workshop bite even deeper. Her translucent form flickered, occasionally becoming almost solid before dissolving back into smoky outlines, her hands perpetually covering a face I couldn't see. The sound of her sobbing was relentless, a soundtrack of utter, bottomless despair that bypassed the ears and resonated directly in the soul. It was the grief I'd felt in waves, now given sound and vague form. The music box on the workbench pulsed faintly with the same cold energy. An open lock, seeming like a gaping wound. I stood frozen, caught between the weeping apparition and the unlocked box. Every instinct screamed to leave, to run, to get away from the house, the box, this manifestation of unbearable sadness. But leaving felt impossible now. I had unlocked something, broken a seal. Simply retreating felt like abandoning a responsibility, however terrifying. Besides, where could I go? The box's influence permeated the house. Would fleeing even work? "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask, my voice hoarse, barely a whisper. "What do you want?" The weeping faltered for a moment, replaced by a sharp, indrawn breath that sounded like crashing ice. The figure didn't lower her hands, didn't look up, but her sobbing hitched, taking on a ragged, almost angry edge. A new wave of emotion washed over me, colder and sharper than the grief. Bitterness, resentment, a profound sense of betrayal. It coiled in my stomach like frozen serpents. Then, words began to form amidst the weeping, whispered and broken, yet chillingly clear in the unnatural silence. He promised forever, took him, left me only the cold, the silence, the music, his music. The voice was thin, reedy, ancient-sounding, laced with that same unbearable sorrow, but now threaded with venom. Who was he? The maker of the box, a lover, a husband. Evelyn Crane hadn't married, had no children according to the sparse records. Had the box belonged to someone before her, passed down through generations, carrying this potent legacy of grief and betrayal? As the spectral woman whispered, the music box on the workbench began to vibrate almost imperceptibly. The mournful tune I had heard faintly before started to play, not from the mechanism itself, but seemingly emanating from the air around the box. It was clearer now, achingly sad, a simple melody that tugged at forgotten heartstrings. Yet underneath it, a discordant note, something jarring and unpleasant, hinted at the bitterness beneath the sorrow. The weeping figure reacted to the music, her form flickering more violently, her sobbing growing frantic, almost panicked. No, don't play it. Stops. When it stops, he forgets, alone again. Always alone. A horrifying realization dawned. The music wasn't just an expression of her sorrow. It was somehow tied to her presence, perhaps even to the memory of the he she mourned and resented. When the music stopped, did the connection fade? Was she trapped in a loop, her grief perpetually refreshed and her connection maintained only by the phantom playing of this cursed melody and winding the box fully? Would that solidify her presence, intensify her pain, or perhaps offer some kind of release, intensify her pain, or perhaps offer some kind of release? The air grew colder still. Frost began to bloom on the metal tools laid out on the workbench, feathering across the dark wood of the music box itself. The spectral woman's form seemed to solidify further, her translucent hands clenching, the weeping turning into low, choked moans. The bitterness intensified, becoming a palpable wave of resentment directed at me. She knew I had unlocked the box. She knew I held the potential to wind it fully. You woke it. Why? Leave it silent. Her plea was chilling, a desire for oblivion, rather than this tormented half-existence tethered to a melody and a memory. I looked from the tormented spirit to the music box. The phantom melody continued its sorrowful, discordant tune. The lockpicks were still in the keyhole. All it would take was a turn, a wind. What would happen? Would the music play loud and clear, finally releasing the full force of her agony into the world, perhaps anchoring her permanently? Would it shatter the box? Would it silence her, as she seemed to both desire and fear? My hand reached towards the pick still lodged in the lock. Every nerve screamed against it, yet the sense of inevitability was overwhelming. I had started this. I had broken the seal. Maybe finishing it was the only way. Taking a deep breath that burned in the frigid air, I grasped the tension wrench. The weeping figure moaned, a long, low sound of despair and terror. The phantom music swelled slightly. My fingers tightened. I began to turn the wrench, engaging the winding mechanism within the cursed music box, bracing myself for whatever horror the full, unleashed melody would bring.